Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Marshall High School proudly presents to you its heavyweight champion of the world, American history. Hey, this is in case you missed American history. It is Wednesday, February 17th. And if you are watching this, that means you couldn't make it to class today, but you still came to see all of this. Always a win. Anywho, I hope you're well. I hope those around you are well. And I hope that you are enjoying this midweek, almost to the end, almost maybe coming back in person week. Okay. So here's the deal for today. I'm going to run you guys through everything that we did today. We covered quite a bit of stuff, but we did it in kind of quick fashion, kind of wrapping up the chapter on the 1920s. But first, a couple of quick things. First, hey, they sent you guys an email, sent your families an email about registering for classes for next year. If you are going to be a sophomore next year, basically kind of the next logical step is world history. You don't have to take world history. It's a one-year class, but it's kind of where a lot of people go when they're sick of me at the end of the year. You do have the option to take American government and citizenship, which is a one-semester class that you will need for graduation. A lot of people do take American government and citizenship, though, as juniors. So kind of up to you. You could take no social studies class if you wanted to, or you could take world history, or you could take world history and government, or just government. If you're watching this and you're going to be a junior or a senior, you have more options. Psychology 1 and 2 with me. You get social studies credit for nothing to do with history. You've got, you've got social problems with Mrs. Deniston. You've got history of the Middle East. You've got, let's see what else we got. American military history. I think there's a couple other options that might be on next year's sheet. So if you're not sure what to do, please ask. All right, so today, a couple of reminders. The Decade That Roared is due tonight at midnight, that assignment that's in Google Classroom. If you have any questions about that, please ask. And also, I got everything up to date and caught up. So if you are wondering how you're doing, check Infinite Campus for your grades. If you see some zeros, turn in some work, take a test. If you can't find the test, ask me for the link and I'll get it to you. Today, we're going to wrap up the 1920s. So please make sure that if you don't, if you're missing some of the stuff, I did share the notes with you. But we're going to move on to the Great Depression tomorrow. So if you got any questions, please reach out. Let me know. All right. So our last three slides in the 1920s are more about like culture and the way life went. And so one of the really big changes in the 1920s has to do with women. And women obviously get a lot more rights and freedom. They're paid a little bit better than they had been. The right to vote becomes a thing for women. And so some big changes for women is more common for women to work outside of the home during the 1920s. Trend that kind of started in World War I, but a lot of women kept working because either they figured that their family needed the money, they enjoyed the freedom of going out and working, having their own money, or just a personal choice. Another thing that happened is women had more time because generally, like the house jobs back then, stereotypically all fell on the women, and things like cooking and cleaning and doing the laundry and things were all women's work. Again, I don't agree with that, just the way it was. But the new appliances of the 20s made it so that it took less time to do things. Washing clothes used to be a very work-intensive, hard job that could take 8 hours, take a whole day. So people wore things like a lot before they washed them. Now you could throw it in the washer, throw in the detergent, set it, walk away, come back, throw it in the dryer, and do other things in between. By the way, if you don't know how to do your own laundry, learn. It's a good skill to have before you go out on your own and you turn all your socks pink and you shrink your clothes. Learn how to do it, ask questions, figure it out. All right. It was also a time for women when a lot of women broke from tradition. The traditional woman had long hair. She covered herself, no collarbones, no knees. They only went out in public with their husbands or their families. And in the 1920s, you get a more non-traditional female. They were sometimes referred to as flappers because of the way they danced. Okay. Flappers had shorter haircuts. A bob was very common, like the women in the pictures. They wore short dresses. Oh my God, scandalous. This woman has knees. And oh my God, they have collarbones and you can see their shoulders. Oh! Okay, they must be witches or something. They smoked, they drank, they drove cars. They went out with groups of women instead of with their husbands or their fathers. And this was seen as a big break from tradition and was a big conflict point between the older generations and the current or newer generations. Was kind of the change there. Kind of maybe some of the ways that like you have conflict with your family over your phone or your technology or TikTok or whatever. They had it about style and haircuts and wearing makeup and outwardly being expressive of who you wanted to be. Another big change in the 20s is that being a teenager kind of became a thing. It used to be you went from being a kid, you went to school, to you're out, get your own job, take care of yourself. In the 1920s, the window of not having to be quite as responsible gets a little bit bigger. And high school becoming more popular allows people to be, I'm not going to say kids longer, but they allows them to be teenagers and do more of the things that teenagers do, to have less responsibility and to not have to work a job to support yourself or your family. Now, that's not all teenagers. Some teenagers did have to work to support their families. The next idea is that there were a lot of changes in transportation during the 1920s, and two major areas were the car and the airplane. 1900 America, you didn't see that many cars. But by 1920, my lights went out. Cool. But by 1920, there were 26 million cars on the road, and they were actually starting to get some roads. It wasn't just dirt paths that with ruts and you could get stuck and you might as well be driving in a field. Highways start to become a thing, paved with speed limits because cars can go faster. The idea that you could get places changed where you worked and how you lived. It tied cities and countries together. Before the car, the average American never went much more than 50 miles away from where they were born. So take a map and figure out what 50 miles is and draw a little circle around your hometown, and that's it. Okay. Now people can live in Marshall and work in Madison or Milwaukee or Chicago or Janesville. And that's more common. It wasn't back in the day. If you lived in Marshall, you worked in Marshall. Maybe you went to Waterloo, okay, because you had a horse or something like that, okay? So suburbs are created in a way. Gas stations become more common. Now, granted, they were full serve. They pumped your gas for you. They cleaned your windshield. They checked your fluids. They checked your tires if you had air tires. Cars are used for recreation, car racing, but also getting away for a weekend, going on a Sunday drive. Places like the Dells become more popular because people can go and see them. And it also changes dating. Rather than having to go have the date on the couch at your significant other's house and courting, you could pick someone up with a car and go. And their parents weren't there, and lovers' lanes and stuff like that start. The airplane is a big change in the 1920s. Now, people weren't, like flying their whole family to go see Mickey Mouse in Florida or anything, but airplanes became this like daredevil, new, adventurous thing. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh flew a plane that looks a lot like a giant garbage can, if you've ever seen it, called the Spirit of St. Louis, from New York to Paris, nonstop across the Atlantic Ocean. And it made him the first person that had ever done that. Lindbergh, it's a 27-hour flight. He almost fell asleep. He almost died. It was really sketchy. And if you ever see the Spirit of St. Louis, I don't think you'd want to fly anywhere in it, to be totally honest. Amelia Earhart, pictured up here at the top, became known as the First Lady of the Air. She set and broke all kinds of records for not just female pilots, but male pilots. Her death is still kind of a national mystery. Well, we assume her death is a national mystery. We don't know what happened to her. She was completing a flight around the world where she stopped several times with her navigator when radio transmission stopped, and they never made it to their next landing spot. A lot of theories about her. A lot of people have claimed to find her plane over the years, but to no avail. There you go. You want to be a famous historian, find Amelia Earhart. It'll be her bones. She couldn't be alive anymore. William Boeing starts producing airplanes. Now, if you don't know that name, Boeing makes most of the passenger airplanes that we fly in the world, and also a lot of our military use planes too. Boeing. Okay. In 1927, a guy named Juan Trippi decides that maybe regular everyday people could fly on planes. Maybe we could train pilots and we could fly them from, I don't know, Chicago to New York, and they could buy a ticket and things. And he starts Pan Am Airways. Okay, so by the 1930s, you could, with a decent chunk of money, buy a ticket to fly. Okay. Remember, we said, what was it? 6 months to get across the country by covered wagon, 6 days by train, and probably 6 hours by airplane. Now, back then it would have taken longer. Planes didn't go as fast and things like that. Okay. Now, pop culture. What did people do for fun? Well, first of all, the 20s were a time where a lot of people rebelled and they did new things, but people also had a lot more freedom. They had a little bit more money in their pocket. They had more time because of all the appliances. Work days generally shortened. And so people did a lot of different things for fun or for their hobbies. Sports became really popular. Golf was kind of something that everybody could do. Now, not always well. I'm a terrible golfer. But probably the most famous golfer of the time was a guy named Bobby Jones. They even played with wooden clubs back then. Bobby Jones won like all the tournaments. Baseball was a big thing, and the big baseball team in this country was the New York Yankees. Babe Ruth was the big player. Controversial because he made more money than the president every year, and people thought that was crazy. He was teamed with Lou Gehrig, who, guys, he's so famous that he dies from Lou Gehrig's disease. That's when you know you're a big deal, when you die from a disease that's named after you. All right, they played for the New York Yankees. If you remember The Sandlot, Smalls hits the Babe Ruth ball over the fence. The Beast gets it. They pickle the Beast. They return the Beast, and they trade the Babe Ruth ball for a 1927 New York Yankees ball, Murderer's Row. Okay. Notre Dame football is probably the big thing. College football was a big deal in this country. You supported your local team. You could go to the games. Mostly running the football, not a whole lot of passing. That's the way football was. If you weren't into sports, radio was a way that you could listen to your shows. You weren't tuning in to a TV show. You weren't going to see Criminal Minds, but you could listen to Little Orphan Annie. You could listen to detective shows. You could listen to the news. You could listen to music. Advertisements. One of the big shows every week was Friday Night Fights. They had boxing matches. Fisticuffs that they would broadcast live on the radio. I can't imagine a boxing match on the radio. And then he hit him, and the other guy hit him. Oh, a big right hand. I don't know what that would be like. Movies changed forever in the 20s. Before this, movies had been silent movies. They didn't have characters that talked. There was a soundtrack played along with them. Someone would play the piano. In 1927, The Jazz Singer debuts, starring a man named Al Jolson. It was the first talkie, where when their mouths moved, words actually came out. And when they played musical instruments, music came out, and people were in awe. It was still black and white. The Jazz Singer has some blackface moments in it where they are portraying black characters and paint their faces black except for an area around their mouth. That's a big no-no. 1928, Disney releases their first full-length cartoon, not movie. And you get Steamboat Willie, and you got Mickey Mouse right there as Steamboat Willie. You've even got Pete, the bad guy from your Mickey Mouse Clubhouse days in there. The big book of the 20s is The Great Gatsby, written by F. Scott Fitzgerald. You guys will read that your junior year in high school in English 11. And jazz becomes kind of the big new music of the time. Jazz came out of the South. A lot of white Northerners considered it to be black music, but it was more up-tempo, more improvisational, a lot of horns, a lot of percussion sections and things like that. Jazz really kind of leads itself to more of the music that we listen to today. Some of the big jazz performers at that time were Louis Armstrong. You might know him. He's the guy that always played with his cheeks all puffed up, and he's got kind of a gravelly voice. The song you would probably know is What a Wonderful, and I think to myself, what a wonderful. I think it hurts my throat to sing like that. Duke Ellington was famous as a piano player and a big band leader and a music composer and arranger. Duke Ellington led bands that looked like this and had huge horn sections and things like that. The Cotton Club was the big club to go to listen to music, to dance. It was in Harlem, New York, part of the Harlem Renaissance. The Charleston was a new dance craze. You want to be impressive? Watch YouTube, learn how to do the Charleston at your first high school dance, get right to the middle of the dance floor, do the Charleston. Everyone will think you're cool. That is not true. Everyone will laugh at you, and I will too. And one big controversial thing that shows the effect that court trials can have in the country is the Scopes monkey trial. There's basically a court case over whether evolution can be taught in schools or if only creation can be taught. an interesting time to be alive, but it leads us to one of the scariest times to be alive in this country, and that's the Great Depression, which we'll start covering tomorrow. If you have any questions about anything, please reach out. Let me know. Otherwise, hope you're having a great day. Hope you're well. We'll see you soon. I'm still dark in here. I wave my arms around a lot to get the lights to come on. Have a great day.